Hola, hola. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Annabelle Quintero, your cultural wellness coach. So happy you joined me today. So, today is a full moon in Aquarius. But before I go into that, what does that have to do with Latino culture and history? That's why I'm on the channel. So, I wanted to share a couple things. So, as I've been studying throughout the last 20 years, most of Latino culture and history is found in the Codex. It is Roman Catholic text. It's in the Vatican Library. And so I just wanted to share that a lot of what will be shared in this channel will be from the perspective of the Roman Catholic Church in terms of it being a political, financial entity. So I wanted to share that because I respect all faiths and all spiritual practices. And so this is more to lay a foundation of understanding, like how did we become the biggest multiracial ethnic group in the Americas? And besides looking at, African history and European history and history of the Americas, bringing that all together and also examining what was going on in the Roman Catholic Church as an institution that is spiritual, political, and financial. So I just wanted to preface that for you all. Uh, today is just a powerful moment. So when we think about colonization and we think about what spiritual practices were allowed and which ones were not. So African spirituality, especially you'll see in the Caribbean culture, a lot of, Yoruba's spiritual practice had to be hidden through Catholic saints. And especially with the law, the Doctrine of Discovery, and there were other laws too that were passed during the Crusades, people were not allowed to practice the rites and rituals of their ancestors. And this was for European tribes, for Africans, and for Native Americans. We all lost a huge part of our spiritual practice due to the Doctrine of Discovery and due to the Roman Catholic Church. That is just fact. And so when our cultures were indigenous, what did they practice? Well, what we can see is one part is astrology, astronomy. And I say that because many of us, there's a resurgence of that in our society, but it was also something that was taught to all spiritual leaders. So when we think about astrology, and I'm going to frame it in the terms of like Latino culture and history is the dominant culture is we're Christian, boom. We're Catholic, boom. Now there's a huge Protestant effort, yes, and movement, and a lot of people converting to being Protestant. But the reason why I'm sharing that is that's still the dominant culture's main religion. And so astrology still is not a part of that conversation. Yes, even though we have the Three Kings and we have Three Kings Day, and that's an element, and there's some mentions of it in the Bible text that is sometimes in sermons, but for the most part, astrology is still really viewed as, and it's othered, and I wanted to center it. Because as I've been studying, our African ancestors built the pyramids of Giza, to align, and they just had a huge alignment. It's called Lion's Gate. They align when the planet Sirius, which you can see without a telescope, and Sirius, the Earth, and I'm getting them confused. The Earth and the Orion constellation, they align. Another place they align is in the Yucatan Peninsula, our Mayan temple, the descending god temple, called Amisakaba. Amisakab. I hope I said it correctly. Uh, that aligns on the spring equinox. That temple was built to let everyone know when the morning star, when Venus and the sun align, that's the spring equinox. So we have this connection to our ancestors, always had a connection to the planets, to astrology. If we took the time out, and it takes a long time to build anything, let alone these massive temples and pyramids and that are just so beautiful. They're just awe-dropping. I had the honor and opportunity to be in Tulum and to be at that temple, and it's just absolutely gorgeous and amazing. The energy there is such a it's like a vortex of energy. And so I share that because as we start thinking about not othering Indigenous cultures, our spiritual practice is something that is personal, but how can we be more inclusive? How can we learn from our ancestors? And so even if we look at it through the Christian perspective, I think what I hear mostly is, okay, but God made everything. So yes, but if God made everything, then why not learn about what he made? Why not learn what it means? Because God created a whole other consciousness, a whole other system, and you have the opportunity to learn that system to understand God's consciousness even more. So, anyways, that's just a side note. But I wanted to share that because I feel that astrology is huge, is ancestral. And if you look in Africa, if you look at Europe and the Americas, we were all astrologers. We all had a connection to Mother Earth, especially for farming. And so why would we go from, let's say, a lunar calendar to having a calendar that's based on Christ's lifeline? Well, that was part of the Roman Catholic Church being a political force, right? That's a political act to change time, change how people track time. That's very political, because then there is your rites and rituals get discombobulated, they're nowhere seen. And because of the doctrine of discovery, it was not allowed. And so I share that because that is a political act, right? One that is to have more control, to make sure people are not connected to their ancestors' spiritual practices. And so that Christianity becomes the main way of practicing, and of course, later down the road, it's called salvation. So today is the full moon in Aquarius, and moons have many phases. Especially for women, I would love to know, when is your menstrual cycle? Do you know the moon phase of your menstrual cycle? That's a powerful thing to reconnect with your body and the natural clock, because human life, even when we're pregnant for 40 weeks. So our lunar calendar is there. Even if we're not bleeding anymore, it's like the lunar calendar is like, I'd say, the universal natural biological clock. So I think that's a profound thing to know, right? And the moon governs gravity, the moon governs the waters, and we're 70% water. So people that work in emergency, they know when it's a full moon, so much stuff is happening. If you sail, oh my goodness, people who sail definitely keep track of the moon phases. And especially if you're, we still have the Farmer's Almanac as well. So very powerful. Today in the full moon in Aquarius is a sign that it's about the collective experience. So today you might be thinking about or confronted with the stories that you play in your mind that remind you of resentment, that bring up resentment. And so I would like to direct your consciousness by journaling, watching yourself by journaling. How can you write, how can you work through this full moon through journaling? So one of the ways in which I feel that that could help is write a story that is bringing up resentment, that is bringing up a moment where you feel like you're angry still, or also just practicing self-awareness so that you can see, what am I doing right now that is not serving my purpose, that is not allowing me to continue to take action for my full embodiment that I keep striving for. But for embodiment, we know that we have to take steps and live it and become it, right? And so I invite you all to journal what those stories are, acknowledge a triggering story from your childhood, watch the emotions that come up, the resentment, the anger, the sadness. Also, watch what's going on in your body. Like, what are the sensations? Are you getting goosebumps? Do you feel a flutter in your belly? All of that, write it all down, because today's the day to really have an opportunity with yourself to be like, go through all of this self-awareness practice and ask yourself, okay, I know this full pattern with this memory or this situation or this story. Done. I want to be done with this. Basta ya. Ya termine con esto. Because believe me, we are all carriers of stories. So my question to you all is, which story are you truly trying to carry forward? It's going to make a profound difference for you to practice self-awareness, to get to a location and a place and a time with yourself, to truly understand your power. And think about it. If our ancestors did this, if our ancestors built pyramids and temples to know when certain alignments were happening, to know the phases of the sun and where Venus is and the morning star, you can also do that as well. Give yourself permission to step into the unknown, step into your cultural blind spot, to understand yourself more. And it's just an opportunity. It's just another phase for you to understand yourself more. So I hope that the journaling exercise works. But most importantly, know that with any question that you ever have, yes, the question is very important, but living out the question is more important. So decide what type of carrier of stories do I want to be? And which stories am I truly going to carry forward for my next evolution to take place? I hope that helps. Wishing you all a beautiful full moon in Aquarius. Have a great night.